Welcome to the Global Girlfriend.
Shall we book a flight to Stockholm, Sweden?
Yup. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Global Girlfriend. My name's Brianna,
And my name's Morgan.
and we are your hosts of the Global Girlfriend podcast. We are a podcast for women who live abroad or travel extensively or want to live abroad and travel extensively. And we get into all of the fun, exciting, and beautiful moments that this lifestyle brings. Today, we have a really fun episode. We are talking about how to maximize on travel when you don't have a remote job. So, Morgan and I have lived all over the world. We have worked some remote jobs, some non-remote jobs. Currently, both of us do not have a remote job, and yet we still find tons of time to incorporate travel into our lives. So we are going to get into how we are able to do that and how you can do that as well if that is something that you are interested in. So I think to kick things off, I think sort of the first thing that we have talked about is just the idea that I think sometimes people get into their mind that they need a lot of time off to travel, that they need a lot of money to travel, that they need this really cool digital nomad job to make travel their lifestyle. And I think the first thing that you sort of need to do is just sort of change your perspective on that. I think that anybody can travel extensively or live abroad. And yeah, I think we're just excited
Mm-hmm.
to get into how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it all comes down to kind of prioritizing. So, yeah, a lot of, like Brianna said, currently in our lives, we both don't have remote jobs, but it's about really what are your priorities? And if travel is one of those, like you got to commit to that and really prioritize it in your life, on your calendar, in your budget. But yeah, so, changing the narrative around travel. So, if you are like us right now and you don't have a remote job, um, some ways that you can work around that. One of the things that you can do is micro travel. So, what I mean by that is weekends, you take your public holidays and really maximize those and try to fit in as many trips as you can in the time given.
Yeah, totally. And I think another thing that you can do is sort of reframe distance. So local trips are super valid, or just sort of sticking to places that are close by. If you only have a long weekend, maybe it doesn't make sense to take a 6 hour flight. But like an example that I can think of is like when we were living in Albania, of course, we were, excited to travel to all of the really big European iconic places. But for
Mhm.
example, before I moved to Albania, I first of all had never really even heard of North Macedonia. Um, but it was like
Yeah.
a 3 hour drive away. And so when we had a long weekend, instead of being like, all right, let's go to Sweden, it was like, where can we drive? And then we got to explore really cool places in places like North Macedonia, or
Yeah.
Serbia, or these places that aren't necessarily
Kosovo.
bucket list places, or they at least weren't bucket list places for me. But I'm so glad that I prioritized getting out of the city where I was and going and exploring somewhere nearby. I think that's like a really great way to have really cool travel experiences.
Oh, absolutely. And Bran and I have a lot of really fun ones together, doing little ski trips, little hiking trips around. So I think that's a super great point. And then in my current day, I am back in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's been a shift for me for sure, going from living in Europe to being here. But one of the things that I've really loved is incorporating that a little bit of local adventure and doing like exploring the Texas Hill Country or going up north to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and really trying to prioritize those little local getaways. And then also, I think another thing that you could do is be really intentional with your travel between jobs and contracts. Really maximize that. If you are in a moment between jobs, you've saved up enough money to go do these travels. I think really using that time while you have it is really great. And I also have done this and know a lot of people who this is their career, where they work a lot of events, music festivals all over Europe, um, and all over the world in general. And so I know a lot of people use that, um, these different festivals all over to travel, but also in between gigs that they have and events that they have. they really use that time to travel and get it all in. And so I think that's a really good another good thing to think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like that segues really nicely into the next thing we wanted to talk about, which is if you are not someone who can have a digital online remote job, there are so many jobs that you can do strategically that help you incorporate travel into your life. Both Morgan and I obviously have worked teaching abroad, which is a really great way to see the world. I think we would both
Hmm.
strongly recommend that you only teach abroad if you enjoy working with kids. That is like one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like go teach English abroad, and I'm like, do you know how to do that? But if you do know how to do that, and it is a passion of yours, then definitely that's a really, really great way that you can see the world. The way that I got my sort of start is I used to do working with like NGOs and social enterprises. That was how I was able to sort of go back and forth between Kenya and Ghana for a few years. So that was really cool. That's an option if you're thinking about, oh, what's a non-remote job that I can do? What are some other ones?
Yeah, I think those are really great ones. And some other ones, and I've met people who've done this. What there could be, you could be a flight attendant or cruise work, which have some built-in travel perks there. I actually, after I taught for a couple years in Madrid, I was kind of already thinking like, I'm so curious about other job options in life, and I thought about. I had a friend who was a flight attendant for Emirates, and I was really intrigued with that. So I went through the entire interview process and got to like the very last stage, and then they found out I have a tattoo on my neck, and you're not allowed to have tattoos. And I was like, dang it! I was like, I could have used
Ah,
stage makeup, but it was actually perfect. I didn't that I wasn't ready to move to Dubai and such. So, anyways, I think that, or there's a lot of seasonal jobs. You could work at I know people who work at ski resorts in Switzerland and Colorado, and summer camps. I think are great, or even vineyards. I know there's a lot of seasonal work for vineyards all over the world where they need people to help. I don't even know what all the terminology is.
squash the grapes.
Squash the grapes, maybe bottle. Um, can you think of any other ones?
um, Off the top of my head, I mean, like, yeah, like you said, that sort of seasonal work. I was an overseas nanny, which was really
Mhm.
fun. I think if you have a skill, you can probably find a way to apply that skill in an international context. Like, I'm thinking just off the top of my mind, I have a friend who is a really good filmmaker and photographer, and he got a job working for 9 months as a photographer on a cruise ship. So he got to see the world and take photos of people. So I think, like, if you have a skill or something that you're passionate about, it's totally doable to find a way to do that in an international context. And then another thing is if you don't feel like, oh, I want to live abroad, but I want more time to travel, finding ways to like apply your skills in like a freelance contract sort of way is a really great way
Mhm.
to do it. One of my best friends who I lived with in Kenya came and stayed with me for a month this year in Indonesia because she works in film. So in between TV series that she was filming, she was able to come here for a month and then pick up another contract when she got back. So if you're feeling like I want more free time, I think sort of freelance work and
Yeah.
contract work is something. I'm wondering if
Yeah.
you want to talk, Morgan, about because I think you did a whole bunch of events for a few summers, right? Do you want to talk about what that was like?
Oh gosh. Yeah, okay, well maybe I'll just kind of I feel like I'm kind of
So
I feel like
many
we've said this
jobs.
before, a career chameleon, if you will.
Yes.
Which isn't always celebrated. I feel like the States, it's very much like find your career, stick to it, and like prosper. But also like generationally now, I feel like we're in a generation that has changed.
Yeah,
People
100%.
are more open to changing careers. But anywho, so I'll just go through my timeline.
Yeah.
Started off, my dream was to be a teacher, taught a couple years in Texas, traveled like any break I had, I would travel.
Hmm.
And then I was like, I have to live abroad. So then in Spain, I worked as a teacher for 2 years. And then in Albania, I was a drama teacher like Brianna for 2 years. And then I was like, I cannot teach any longer. I have no more capacity to. So
It
then I was like,
happens.
okay, what can I do? And so I have done a like US based remote recruiting job. I've done I've done social media management for a company where I manage their social medias remotely. And then also for myself as well, I worked for, I forgot what it's called, the company that started TikTok. They were starting a new app, and so I was creating content for them. That was only short lived. I have worked, what you mentioned earlier, I've worked music festivals for this English company in Albania and in France. And what else have I done? I mean, I've done small things like I was an extra in a film, this
Amazing.
documentary in Albania. That was like super small. And I think that's pretty much it. I feel like, it's hard to when you're trying to find something that works for your lifestyle and also that's stable and consistent. And a lot of these, were for just a short amount of time. So it's it's hard to grind and try to figure it out. And but I think that's pretty much and then when I was when I would come home and visit, since I was still a certified teacher, even though I didn't want to teach anymore, I would substitute teach just to be able to like be here and just make some extra money to fund my life and my travel. So I think that's pretty much the gist of all my things I've done. Okay, but
I
you've mentioned oh sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say to to focus on you. You've already mentioned a few that you've done, but do you have any other jobs that you've done through the years?
I feel like, and I tell this to my students all the time, like I have had a million jobs, both in Canada and abroad. And I don't regret a single one of those jobs. I've learned something from everywhere that I've worked. Um, and I think very similar to you, and what I'm really inspired about by like your journey is like you've had all of these jobs and then you've had all of these incredible travel experiences that have tied on to them. So like when you actually look at your life, you're like, wow, look at how much experience Morgan has, and then like look at all of the places that you've seen. And I think sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you're like hustling and grinding and what's next, and you kind of don't really like recognize and acknowledge this incredible life you're building. But I think what you've done is awesome.
Oh,
So there's that.
thanks.
But yeah, what jobs have I done? So I've done the NGO social enterprise work. I found a way. So I'm very, very passionate about the arts. I'm very passionate about
Mm-hmm.
activism. I found a job where I was able to blend both of those passions by working for an arts and activism organization in Nairobi, which was really fun. When
Oh
I
yeah.
literally became a nanny because I was kind of not really sure what else to do. It was something that I was going to do for a year while I figured my life out. And then that transformed into me moving to the Caribbean to be a nanny there, which was like really cool. Then I sort of, followed my passions and became a teacher. But I've also had a bunch of, small little random jobs as well. I've worked in film, which has been really fun.
Yes.
That has been great. I've supported some artists and musicians on their tours as they've been traveling around to different countries. So again, it's sort of just like you, I followed my passions, I followed my curiosities, and that has landed me work all over the world. And I've never had a remote job. And so I think that yeah, it's totally
Yeah,
possible.
wow.
And this is like kind of an aside, but it was something that I wanted to talk about on this episode. And like again, I totally recognize my privilege. But I live in Bali, and Bali has so many digital nomads, and I do a lot of social things with people that do digital nomad work. And a lot of
Mhm.
times I've experienced this when I first meet people. A lot of times they are digital nomads, and then they ask me what I do, and I'm like, oh, actually, I'm a teacher and I have to go to school every day. And sometimes I feel like I'm met with judgment by the digital nomad
Oh,
people. They're
yeah.
like, "Oh my god, I could never just like show up and do the same thing every day, and like I could never be tied down to one place." And they give me this whole big speech about how they're more free than I am, which is fine. That's their own journey. Like everyone's on their own thing.
Mhm,
But for
mhm.
me, I'm like, actually, I'm really passionate about my job, and I love that I get to be in Bali, but then I get, as a teacher, we get a lot of vacation and I get to travel all
Oh,
around.
yeah.
So I think that like sometimes you might feel like, oh, if I'm not a digital nomad, I can't be an international traveler. And I just think that that's completely wrong. I think that if you have a skill,
Yeah.
if you work in an office, if you have a handcraft or like whatever it is that you do, like you can do that abroad, and don't let the digital nomad shamers get you down. Because I honestly, living in Bali, I feel like I have this
Absolutely.
conversation once a week where people are like, "Oh, you must be poor you must be so tied down by your job," and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like I haven't lived in my country for like 12 years."
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I also think that I think that's one thing about going into your job every day. A super special thing about that is it also brings this sense of routine and stability that sometimes lacks when you're living abroad or traveling all the time. And I feel like it really is grounding. And I think people can, maybe get that from their remote jobs too, but I think this really grounds you and brings that kind of routine that I think humanity needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that kind of like brings us into our next little segment, is like how
We're
to actually get the travel in when you are in a more routine based situation. So you do this in America, I do this here in Indonesia. But I think if you really want to maximize travel, I love what you said before. You just have to make it a priority. Like it is
hmm
so easy to be like, oh, there's a long weekend coming up. I'm just gonna, relax or whatever, and then the 3 days have gone by and you haven't really done anything productive and you feel sad on the Sunday night. I think what you should do is like the second you know that you have time off, book a trip. Because, like, yeah, you're
hmm
going to be tired a few days before the trip. That's why there's a holiday coming up. But I think that, like, if you know that there's a public holiday, if you know you have some vacation days, if you know that, like, there's a few days off, just book the trip. Just go. You will thank yourself for that later.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And then another thing, if budget is something that's very crucial for you, it's for most people. I always like to travel very budget friendly. But a
Same.
couple things, yeah, couple things that could help that if you have the time. Flying midweek is always a lot cheaper than flying over a weekend.
Mhm.
And then also the seasons. I found that September travel usually is a bit cheaper. Sometimes May is a bit cheaper. I don't know. Maybe not May. Maybe February. For
Yeah.
sure, February is cheaper.
February, March.
February, March. Well, in the States, though, March is
Oh,
also
March
spring
break.
break.
Yeah.
So that could be expensive. Scratch May. Definitely September, October, I feel like are some cheap ones, and February. And then also say yes to the budget airlines. In the States, don't be afraid of Spirit Airlines. Don't be afraid of Frontier Airlines. You might not sit by who you're traveling with, but that's okay.
The plane
um,
probably won't leave on time, but that's all right. You'll still get there.
yeah. And then Europe, I mean, there's so many. Wizz Airline, which we've flown a
Yeah,
lot.
a million times.
Ryanair. Are there some budget airlines in Asia as well?
Oh my gosh, tons. There's like, yeah, Indonesian Air, CityLink, Lion Air. Like, there's so many.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
amazing. So yeah, really maximize on those budget airlines. Figure out when you're going to fly to keep the budget intact.
Yeah, and then another really great thing, which I have never done this, but I know people who have done this and they've absolutely loved it, is if you are, maybe a contract worker and you have a month off and, you want to travel, but again, you're keeping the budget in mind, house sitting and pet sitting internationally is totally a thing. Or the
Oh
sort
yeah.
of like work exchanges where, you go and you work on someone's farm and they let you hang out in their guest house or something. There's tons of options for like working, house sitting, pet sitting. That's totally something that you can do. And it's a great way to connect with the local culture and also get some accommodation for free.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's also this website. I haven't used it yet, but I've looked into it. And one of my besties, she's who told me about it, and she's used it before. It's called Kindred. Kindred. Have you heard of it?
Oh, no.
It's where you put your house on. It's kind of reminds me of The Holiday with Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet kind of vibe.
A
But you
dream.
put your home on. I know you put your home on this website, and other people around the world do too. And so when you're traveling, you can stay in people's homes that are on this website for severely discounted. Like for like a week, it'll be like $200, which is yeah.
Amazing.
So she's used it before.
Okay.
Um, and it's been great. So I haven't used it yet, but that is also an option.
Nice. I love that. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, and I guess like some sort of just other creative ways that you can fit travel into your non-remote life is like mindset is everything. So even like here living in
Yeah.
Bali, sometimes if I just have a regular weekend, I'll like book a trip to an island that's, 30 minutes away by ferry. And the second I get on the ferry, I'm like, I'm on vacation.
Yep.
It's just a regular weekend, but I've told myself I'm on vacation. I stay at a nice little guest house. I do things that are out of the regular weekend routine. And those weekends feel longer. They feel more enjoyable. So I think if you can, just plan, even if you only have one day off or a little just regular weekend, change your mindset to like, I'm going on a little trip. And it really sort of
Oh,
like
yeah.
satisfies that travel bug for sure.
Oh yeah, and refreshes you. That's for sure. So whether you're doing it for that, just to have a refreshment, or you want to kind of really put like a specific purpose to it. You want to travel for upskilling. Maybe you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do a trip to really focus on learning language, or I need to give back and I want to do a trip to volunteer, and so on. So maybe you plan a trip with that kind of intentionality of really like advancing the self in a very specific way.
Totally. And something that I have done through teaching, and I'm sure you can do this through other industries, is like oftentimes there'll be like workshops or courses in
Hmm.
neighboring countries or neighboring cities. And so planning a trip to sort of, go and take one of those professional development courses, you do your course
Oh
during
yeah.
the day, and then you have the opportunity to explore the city in the night. And like, yes, it's busy. Yes, you'll be tired, but it's a great way to increase your skills, but then also enjoy a city. And then you can like write it off and say it's work. um, and
Yeah,
then
no, that's
yeah,
perfect.
just sort of like what we have said before. It's like, if there's a long weekend and you have a vacation day and you can tack it on to the end to extend your trip, do that. Take the train, like just mindset. Tell yourself you're going on a trip, tell yourself that you're traveling, and you will find yourself on the road.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so kind of just wrapping this up, um, real talk and takeaways. Um, you don't need to have a remote job and have a MacBook on the beach to be a global girlfriend. It can come in that could be you, and we love it.
Yep.
But it could also come in so many different ways. It could be, yeah, you teaching the children how to act on a stage on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Or like right now, I'm actually working for my parents' company, which is not remote, and but it allows me the time and the ability to take off, for example, and go to Kilimanjaro for a long time this
Yeah.
year.
Totally. And I
Yeah,
think like just to give like the listeners an idea of like what both of our lives look like. So for me, I work like 40 to 50 hours a week. And this year I've been to 3 or 4 new countries that I haven't been to before. And Morgan is like, obviously working in the United States, working a non-remote job. And you've been to Kilimanjaro, you went to Costa Rica,
Morocco.
you've
Oh yeah.
Morocco, Spain, you've just booked a trip to Europe for the summer. You've like hiked a million mountains and you've done so many regional trips. And so both of us are tied to our jobs, if you will.
Yeah.
And if we look back on the year, we've seen so many new things and had so many incredible experiences. So it's totally possible to
Yeah.
have a job and also see the world.
Absolutely. Well, that like kind of reflecting on this makes me just super thankful, and I'm like, life is ridiculous, huh? Very blessed. Very blessed.
So blessed. So I guess what we just want to encourage, if you're listening, we want to encourage you to think about what is one thing that you can do for yourself this month to make time for travel. We would love to
Yeah.
hear about it. We would love to know what you do to incorporate travel into your either remote or non-remote lives. So Morgan, where can people share those things with us on the internet?
Yeah. Please, we would love to get a DM from you and hear about what you do and how you make travel a priority. You can DM us at the Global Girlfriend on Instagram and TikTok, or you can go check out our website, theglobalgirlfriend.com, and put in a little inquiry and share it on there, or just send us an email directly at theglobalgirlfriend@gmail.com.
Go and visit our new website. Some of the links aren't fully live yet, but Morgan has done such a beautiful job with it. I am obsessed with it. It really captures our essence. So please go and check it out. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you next week.
Yep. Thanks, guys. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.